And so for me, like American rum always tends to have really high flavor definition. The flavors on the palate are very crisp. If you get like a lemon or a limey flavor, there's a crisp edge to that flavor. Whereas in the Caribbean, because of a lot of the terroir influences, the flavor definition is a lot more broad. It's sort of like all the flavors are kind of melding into each other and they kind of transfer in and out of each other. And ours tend to be a little bit harder flavor definition. This has to do with, I mentioned the diurnal shift during fermentation, the yeast we tend to use. Like for me, if I'm blind tasting a French champagne or something like Roeder Estate from Anderson Valley, which seems very French, I can tell them apart because of the fermentation esters. And it's just like there's a fruitier fermentation ester in the California one. So we have that. We have these fermentation esters are very prominent. I think that comes a lot from the temperature we ferment at being very different, that diurnal shift being very different, with climate and conditions in which we distill being very different. We have a really linear structure on the palate. Like flavors can drive really intensely and crisply down the palate. It has a crispness and a brightness to it that I really enjoy. Whereas again, the Caribbean rums can be, as a generalization, obviously each one is a little bit different. Could be like Worthy Park, super inland. They have a very different aging climate than other Jamaican producers. But the generalization in America, it's linear, and as a generalization, a lot more of the further southern distilleries in the Caribbean, they have like a broader, rounder, weightier kind of horizontal kind of feel. And yeah, the preservation of the flavor of the base material because of the yeast we select and the temperatures we ferment at, and often the pHs we ferment at, they can preserve that base material flavor. Obviously, you see this in agricole as well, which a lot of them are high altitude or inland. They have a sort of a similar kind of influence, but molasses wise, like the character of the grade of the molasses really comes through. And then we source a lot of wet oak. So when we get our oak barrels, they're still wet inside, which gives a very plush. It's almost like in white wine when you ferment in barrel versus when you age in barrel. The aging in barrel would be going into a dry cask, and then the fermenting in barrel would be going into a wet cask. That same kind of plush integration of the oak from those wet barrels, I think, is really important as well. So yeah, there's just some characteristics that are, if you're tasting for, what is the American rum character, I think those show up.